I'm Kyler Millershaski. I'm out here today at the UTV Rally racing my 2010 Crown Vic with the HooptieX races. So HooptieX is just your cheap off-road rallycross racing. I grew up wanting to race trophy trucks. I think they were awesome to watch on TV. I don't have $500,000 sitting around, but I can afford a cheap Crown Vic. And so what HooptieX is just you find a cheap car and you might lift it a little bit, slap some tires on and go out and race it. So it's just cheap, affordable off-road racing. So I got started in off-road racing doing tough trucks at the local county fairs, and I loved them. They were fun, exciting. You take an old farm truck and they make a really hard course and you try and get the best time, but I would get like one, maybe two races out of a tough truck, and then I had to build a new one or find something else to race. And then I saw the HooptieX come out and I was just like, oh, that's exciting, because I've been racing this car a little over a year now, and I've replaced a few ball joints and tie rod ends, but it's still just a one car investment. I've been raced it over a year, and I love that because I can put more time into it, paint it up a little bit better and make it look neat, and it's a lot better. So yeah, I started doing the off-road racing probably about 5 years ago with the tough trucks, and I might do 2 or 3 a year just at the local county fairs. And then HooptieX, they got maybe 20 or so races a year, give or take, across the nation, and so usually there's one within a couple hours of drive time for me, and I love it. So growing up, I had, the fantasy that most kids have. I wanted to drive a cop car. And so when I started thinking about the HooptieX races, I was just like, well, I want to get a Crown Vic to race that. And so, the fall of 2020, I found this one. It's an old Arapahoe County sheriff's car out of Colorado. Found it, had a bad motor. It's got a Mustang motor in it now, but it's the same. Put a tune on it, and this was my 2020 winter COVID project. I just worked in the shop and worked on lifting it and did that. So I always knew I wanted to race a Crown Vic sometime, and so this was the perfect opportunity to do it. I think it's a great car for it. It's not as fast as some of the Subarus and other things, but I get to live out my dream. I get to drive a race car and I get to drive a cop car. So for a rear suspension, I just pulled out the stock coil springs and I put in some rear coil springs out of an Expedition and used some F-150 shocks. The front suspension was a little bit trickier. I actually used the rear struts out of a Ford Explorer. I had to make a small spacer, and then I used the stock Crown Vic spring and top hat. And doing that, I gained about 4.5 inches of lift front and back. It did give me some issues, so when I lifted the back end, it actually swung the axle forward. So I had to go to Lift-A-Brand and get some adjustable trailing arms. And this is my first race running the Lift-A-Brand adjustable upper control arms on the front. So now my tires are back to being perpendicular to the ground. And they've held up great so far. I'm actually really pleased with the suspension adjustments I've made. Performance-wise, it's pretty much stock Crown Vic. I made a few changes. Like I said, it's got a Mustang motor in it, but it's still the same 4.6 liter. Puts out good power, but I always want more. That way I can break it. But no, I got a tune from Martin Oakes. He's on Instagram, Mo's Speed Shop South. He's got great tuning. Everybody I talk to on the Crown Vic world, that's who they get their tuning from, and I'm really happy with the tuning. Really brought the car to life. To take advantage of the increased power I was putting out, I went ahead and changed the rear end to 410 gears and put a locking differential in there. That way I can just get a little bit more traction out of it. With that added traction, I did put some Interco Reptile UTV side-by-side tires on the rear end just to take advantage of that extra torque I was putting out as well. So for the interior, I just updated the seats. I put in some bucket racing seats. Found them really cheap on Amazon. It was a heck of a deal. I was pretty excited about that. And I put in a harness bar that I could run a 4-point harness. It does get a little rough out there, so I like having the racing seat that wraps around me and the 4-point harness that just keeps me in place. I don't move around at all in the car, so it helps me pay attention to driving instead of just trying to stay in the seat. So down the road, I really want to put in a roll cage. There's talks about possibly doing a stage rally course down the line with the Gambler Off-Road Racing Association. I do know that will require a cage, and I know I and my mom would feel a little bit better if I had a cage in it, so that's on the list to get done. I also would love to get some extended upper and lower control arms for the front, get a little bit more travel, and hopefully be able to handle a little bit more. It certainly needs a skid plate. I think I've torn my radiator about 3 times just for one instance or another, so I really should put on a skid plate. It's been on the list to do. There's only so much time in the day. And so I really would love to see that change. Perfect world, I'd love to put a turbo on it too, but yeah, I kind of can't keep track of my radiator, so I know I can't keep track of an intercooler either. So I got some adjustments to do before I get a turbo on there, but it's on the list to do. So this weekend was a pretty fun one. Got quite a few laps in yesterday. I did tear my radiator out yesterday afternoon just because I hit a jump faster than I should have, and I didn't have the ground clearance that I wanted to have. But I've learned my lesson. I brought a spare radiator, so I changed that out. And then today, I actually had my fastest time today, which was really exciting. I did end up losing my wheel spacer on my left side, so I had to I lost that wheel mid-course, and then after I lost that, my right ball joint decided to leave the chat as well. So I got to do a little bit of infield maintenance, but I've learned I bring spare parts. These courses aren't designed to tear your car apart, but I like to push the envelope and race it as hard as I can. So I'm notorious for losing ball joints and tie rods. So I've gotten really good at changing them, and hopefully if I can get some longer upper and lower control arms, that'll take out that ball joint issue. But other than that, it was a really fun weekend. A little bit windy out here, but you know, you have that on these big jobs, so we'll just power through it and keep having fun. So HooptieX is great. They got races all across the nation. I'm going to encourage you, go on Facebook, go online, look them up, figure out where the closest race is. They've got all kinds of different classes, so you can just find you a cheap, Honda Civic, Subaru Forester, or Crown Vic, and come out and enjoy the race. Yeah, they do give points, but it's not even bragging rights. It's just coming out and having fun. It's great, cheap off-road racing. It's a great family to be around, and it's a lot of fun. So I encourage you to look into it.